I was thinking, like, how can a God love somebody like me?
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Ash Couchman, and I cannot wait to find moments of joy with you today. I am so excited to be diving into the Word of God together today. It is the week leading up to Easter, and I am so excited for some very special Everyday Joy episodes this week. I have been having discussions with some friends and family and different people who have walked totally different journeys with God. And so over the next 5 days, we're going to be hearing 5 different stories of different people's journey of coming to know God. They're almost like little testimony episodes, but the focus is one on the cross and on that moment of them giving their lives to Jesus. But also, it's kind of about what was the lead up? What were the questions they were asking? What were the things they were wrestling with? And who were the people that were impacting their lives that led them to the point of coming to know Jesus? And the stories are all so unique, all so different, and I can't wait for you to hear them. The idea is that you'll be able to share these with friends and family, maybe even people who don't know Jesus, so that you can encourage them and say, hey, so-and-so's story sounds a little bit like yours. You should have a listen and be encouraged by how they've come to know God. So I hope you love this week's episodes. But even before we jump in, I am so excited to officially announce on the podcast that Everyday Joy Live is officially happening. I cannot wait. We did one last year and it was so much fun. It was a bit of a test and learn. We've learnt lots. But we're bringing you a second version of it. It is a bit different from the last one. So if you come along again, it will be different. This is definitely a behind the scenes experience of Everyday Joy. It is in a recording studio. There's a very limited number of seats available. You can get them via the link in the show notes. It's completely free. There's easy, free on-site parking. It is just going to be such a fun afternoon talking about Jesus, hanging out, sharing stories, getting to know people. And the whole idea is that we can continue to build this community, continue to get to know each other and have great conversations that lead us closer to Jesus. So make sure you book those tickets. They will run out quick, but I can't wait to see you there. It's going to be such a beautiful day. Let's jump right into today's conversation. I am so excited to have my beautiful friend India joining me on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Now, this is your first podcast appearance experience. I got to know you. How long have you been at our church for?
I have been at the church around June last year.
Yeah, so almost a year.
Yes.
I feel like that time has flown. But I know that you have a pretty incredible story. And one of the things that I was so inspired by when I heard your story the first time is, yes, it was your obedience. Yes, it was all of these things. But I remember it convicted me so much. And I'm sure we'll go into it a little bit later. I remember feeling so convicted of like, I need to not be intimidated because of the way that people kind of impacted your life. And like I said, we'll get into it later. But I'm just so proud of you. And I am so excited for what God has planned for you. And I just think people obviously don't know you super well at all, but I just could not be prouder of who you are, India, and the journey you're going on with the Lord. And so why don't you give everyone like a little bit of context? Who are you? What makes you excited? Tell me a little bit about who is India.
I am India. I'm 24 and I currently am working at a jeweler's. I find myself crafting and just doodling things and baking, just like little hobbies that like slow me down a little bit.
So good. Yeah, I feel like you do enjoy like the softness and the gentleness of all those things. And you're living at home at the moment.
Yeah, you just moved back.
You are at church. You work like 2 jobs at the moment, and you are just fantastic. You're a part of a connect group. You're doing so many things. I can't wait to hear a bit more of your story. But why don't you give everyone a bit of context as to what was life like for you before Jesus? Because also, actually, something that you could mention, you were living in the UK for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
You were born over there?
Yeah, I was.
So you're technically from the UK.
Yeah.
You've moved back over here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your life, your story? What did family life look like?
Yeah.
Who was India growing up and before Jesus?
I was born in the UK in a little town called Doncaster. And then I moved to a little island called Jersey. And then I moved to Australia. Growing up, life was very peaceful. On the island, like Jersey, is a very tiny island, 9 by 5 miles. Life was peaceful. Everyone knew
Everyone knew
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, it was lovely. And then I moved to Australia, and that was really the first time I'd ever experienced like different cultures, different religions. Like at my school, a pastor would come in every week. I had no idea what he was. I had no idea what a pastor even was, but he would come in every week. And then I moved here, and there was all different cultures, all different religions. And I was like, what happened to the guy that used to come into our church, our like school? And yeah, I didn't grow up in a Christian family by any means.
You've lived in the UK, you moved to Australia, you're in this non-Christian family. Did you study? Like what was life kind of looking like for you? Religion obviously wasn't a huge
Yeah.
part of it, aside from maybe the traditional sort of side
Yeah,
of things.
like you're English, so you have God, like that sort of thing.
Yes.
But you don't know what God is. I had
Yeah.
no idea what God was.
Wow. So it was kind of like this pastor comes to our school. I guess he knows God and he tells us about God, but we don't
Yeah.
fully have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
What was kind of hard growing up? Like, did you ever seek God? Did you ever feel like you needed God? Was there anything there, or were you kind of just like blissfully living your life unaware?
I was like blissfully living in my life with my eyes closed, but I had a really amazing family who made everything felt like it was provided for. And it wasn't till later in life when you don't rely on your family as much and you do have to start providing for yourself, or you start thinking more freely, that I had those questions of, is there something more?
And is that kind of the main question that came to mind? And kind of what age were you when that started happening? What was kind of going on when you were like having those questions?
I was probably around 14 or 15 when I started questioning things like that. I went to a Christian school, um, and that definitely exposed me, and I understood more, but I didn't believe. I went to a youth group with my friends, but that was more of a social thing, being out of bed after like 9:30 and not at home. Like that was more like why I was going. And then I stopped because I wanted my own life. But I still had that like, there's got to be something. Like all these people can't collectively, I'm very logical. All these people can't collectively believe in something and claim that they have like this, everybody has like the same, there's like a fire in my heart and I want to know Jesus. Like how can millions of people believe that? That's where my brain went to as well. But I pulled away from that and I went into more of a new age pathway, which looked more like I was working in bars, and I currently live in a tiny town full of like musicians and quote unquote hippies, and it's just that sort of environment is what I allowed myself to really immerse myself in from probably 18 to around 20, 21. And that significantly shaped who I was at that time, but then left me emptier than I had at the beginning when I had those questions.
How long did that continue on for? What did it look like? To what point did you kind of get to?
It looked like trying to fill, we are very spiritual beings as humans, and I guess if you don't have God, that spirituality leads you more down the new age spirituality, which is witchcraft, and it's very demonic without us even realizing. So I was trying to fill voids with like yoga and breathwork classes, and that void of wanting to like feel like there's more to the world led me to psychedelics, because I had heard that you're really connected. Like you feel connected to something extra dimensional. It's not something that you have in the everyday world. So I tried it out, and it made me feel more connected to the world than you could ever possibly feel. You feel like you are almost the god of your world. Because I don't know how to explain this, but because I felt so connected to the world, when you come out of these altered states of reality, you have this, it's called like a withdrawal. And the withdrawals are honestly one of the most horrible feelings you will ever feel. I think because you have felt so deeply connected to the world, you were so disconnected from God. Like the furthest you could be, in my personal opinion. So when you come out of it, you have these huge questions that hit you heavier than any other time you think these things. And it's the questions of, like, what am I doing? Like, where is my life going? I am lost. Like, what is happening? I have no purpose. And these questions, they eat you alive for about 24 hours, which is why people do get addicted, I believe, because they don't want to have these feelings. They want to feel like
And
the
they go, I
god of
don't
that.
feel like that when I'm doing it.
Yeah, they're like, I want to be the god of my world. I want to, and yeah, so it was from that I then was like, there has to be something more. I can't feel that connected to something and then come out of it feeling more empty than I did going in. Like, there has to be something more that would fill that gap that isn't a temporary fix. That thought stayed with me for a very long time. I didn't just click my fingers one day and then found God. It was something that I knew was there, but it just wasn't my time yet.
So you've kind of gone through this whole experience. You just have these questions that have pretty much been coming at you since you were 14, but you're squishing them down. You're trying to do something else. You're squishing it down.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you really, was there then a lead up, I guess, after those questions to you coming to know God, or was it in an instant, or kind of what was the journey, I guess, from there to coming to know Jesus?
I went I went back to live in the UK for a while, and it wasn't anything major that happened. It wasn't anything big, but I just had this like overwhelming like pull on my heart of like, it's your time. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know God. I was just like, I just knew that if I was going to find God, I had to do it then.
What was that like for you? Was it a quiet voice? Was it like when you were sitting with those questions, you kind
Yeah.
of just knew that like
It,
it had to be something?
yeah, almost like, I guess you would call it now as a Christian discernment. Like, I just knew that if I wanted to get the answers to those questions, I was going to have to go further than just thinking about them. I'm going to have to go into action. And if the only thing in my mind at that time was look into Christianity, whether that was like, if that was the only thing in my mind, which it was, that's what I went down. So I said a prayer, but it wasn't really a prayer. It was like, well, if you're like real, you kind of need to show yourself to me. It was very, it was,
The number of people I know that have prayed that prayer.
like, I didn't close the prayer, I didn't open the prayer. It was just like, you need to show yourself to me. And it happened in the most unusual way for 3 weeks straight. And I know I had What a Beautiful Name It Is in my head. Now, I love worship, but let me tell you, like, 3 weeks, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, What a Beautiful Name It Is, on repeat in your head. And at that time, I wasn't realizing the name was Jesus. I just correlated that to my high school chapel where they would perform that. And I knew that was a little sign, but I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. And then I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. Like, I need more. Like, I need to learn about it. I need to talk about it. I knew I wasn't going to make that step for myself, and I just waited for a sign. And then I was working in a cafe in the UK, and these two beautiful girls came in. One of them was actually Australian, and one of them was English. And they came in, and I was serving them, and the Australian girl ordered her food and she said oat, very like oat, because she's from like Queensland. And I was like, oh, you're Australian. And we started talking, and I was wearing a cross, but I don't know why I was wearing a cross. And now I wear a cross every day because of how impactful it was. And she was like, are you a Christian? And I was like, yeah. I wasn't. They're going to listen to this and be like, you lied. I was like, yeah, I am. And they're like, you should come to our church. And I was like, yeah, I should. And I went to their church, I think 2 weeks later, and that first church day, I put my hand up, and then the next month I was baptized. And then from there was like a complete transformation of my entire life.
Wow. That's what I was kind of referencing at the start.
Yeah.
Is like, one, I love that you absolutely lied.
I was like, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Absolutely.
I know what that is.
But equally, I was so encouraged when I heard this story for the first time of how easy it is to have a conversation and ask questions. And whether or not you said yes or no in that moment, I think those girls still would have invited you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think whether your answer was, no, I'm not a Christian, or yes, I am, I think that I get the sense that they probably would have invited you to church either way. And so I have been so convicted of like, I need to get better at asking those little questions and doing those little things, not because we are the ones that create salvation. Only God can do that. We can help be partners with God to create the opportunities for people to step into his house. And
Definitely.
yeah, I think when you told me that story, I was so convicted of like, oh man, I can't shrink back. And particularly, I guess, in this week leading up to Easter, people are so much more likely to say yes.
Definitely.
There is a sense of, I'll go for Easter.
Mm-hmm.
But equally, our world is so messy right now. There is so much hard and there's so much unknown. When you know that there is a God that brings truth and brings security and brings
Yes.
hope, we need to point people to that, and we can't
Mm-hmm.
be afraid to. And I'm so glad those girls were so willing to just have a little chat and invite you to church. And I'm so glad that was the trigger point, because you're right. Sometimes we do say, God, give me a sign, do
Yeah.
these things. And when we're obedient to God, sometimes it actually is the answer to those prayers that
Yeah.
you've prayed. And so you go to church, you give your life to Jesus. What was one of the first things that you think God worked on in your heart?
I feel like the first thing he worked on was obedience. My entire life, I have a tendency, if someone tells me to go right, I will just go left. Um, and at the time, I was just being a good person because I didn't quite understand what being a Christian was. When I first came into it, I was like, yep, I'm a Christian. I'm just going to be a
I'm a
good
good
person.
person.
Yeah. Um, but then, like, the obedience turned into like having to really face like honest truth and really step into situations that I didn't really want to put myself into, but I just had to. Um, and in doing that, I I formed like a closeness with God that I can't quite put into words, but it was like this security net of it doesn't matter if I do this, even if it goes against what I'm thinking, even if it goes against like what may impact other people, if I'm doing it because God has told me to, the outcome will be okay. So like the security of he will never allow you being obedient to him. He'll never allow that to crumble or fail, even if at the time it feels like everything is going to crumble and fail. And even if it does for like 2 days, it will never continue. There'll be like a
There'll always be
turnaround.
fruit at some point.
Yeah.
Man. And I think I love what you're saying, you were kind of like, okay, well, I guess as a Christian, I'll be a good person,
Yeah.
and I will just live this life. And we obviously know, you know, as Christians, that it actually has nothing to do with how good we are.
No.
And I'm sure you've had to go on that journey of realizing that.
Mm-hmm.
When for you did you realize that like it was the cross and Jesus alone? Like, can you remember when you were like, oh, actually, this isn't about how good I am?
Yes. I think something I still struggle with to this day is accepting the fact that a person as broken and lost and crumbled as me and as I was and as I still can be is able to receive a love from God that has no bounds. And when I feel like we all hear, he loves you so much, and we hear it all the time, but until you actually like just be still with that and actually understand that, the weight of that doesn't impact you. Like it doesn't impact you until you fully understand it. And I was thinking like, how can a God love somebody like me? And at the time, I wasn't thinking this, but this is something I feel like is relevant. Toby read a Bible verse at church the other day, and he was looking at me when he said it, and I was like, oh, I know this is for me. And it was essentially like as high as the heavens are from the ground is how much he loves us. And me in my logical mind, I was like, where is heaven? Like, I know it's high, but then I'm like, it's actually not even in this world. Like, it's out of this world.
Mm.
It's in a spiritual dimension. And then I went to, oh my gosh, it's in another dimension. Like, this love is so great because it's not of this dimension. It's next dimensional. Like, it's a next level of love that we will never be able to comprehend until we are there. And the conceptualizing that and understanding that completely realigned my heart, because although I can't understand how he can love me sometimes, I know that I don't need to understand, but one day I will know.
Yeah.
And that Yeah. I don't know if that relate. What was your
No.
question?
But I think that's exactly right. Like, and the love that is, other dimensional,
Yeah.
you know, we can't replicate the love of the
No.
cross. We can't. I agree. I think sometimes even at Easter, I'm a bit, or when we talk about the cross, I'm lost
Yeah.
for words
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think there are the words.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying. I don't think we have the words to describe the greatness and grandness of the love of God.
No.
I always think about how, something that I hear people say often is when Jesus hung on the cross, he hung on the cross. I'm always reminded that there was a moment where Jesus truly took on the weight of all of our sin. Like it wasn't a figure of speech.
No.
It wasn't a, you know, oh, he's God, so he didn't
Mm.
experience the pain. There was a moment on the cross where Jesus encountered and experienced the weight of the sin of the whole world. And yet he chose to die and he chose to take it with that other dimensional love that we
Yeah.
can't understand. And I think what you said before was so beautiful because we can't understand it
Mm-mm.
and we won't ever fully comprehend it,
No.
but that's okay
Yeah.
because he's God and we're not. And I have that thought constantly that you were on his mind on the cross. And
Mm.
like I was on his mind on the cross. And
Yeah.
every person listening, whatever you've gone through or done or experienced, like we were on his mind when he hung upon the cross.
Yeah.
And we don't have to understand the love. We just need to accept it.
Yes.
Like it's this gift that we've been given. And I think kind of like what you were saying, it is a lifelong journey of figuring out, God, how do I accept this
Mm.
love? How do I truly trust you with it? But I'm so, so glad you're able to have that revelation of God's exceedingly abundant love that we just don't understand.
Just then, when you were talking, I just had this other revelation. I was reading a bit further on from that, and I had messaged the group about that too. That as far as the east to the west, he has separated us from transgressions. And I just had this image in my mind of, well, for one, east to the west, like where does that even define? Like you can
Where does
keep,
it end?
like you can't even, like you can keep going east forever, you can keep going west forever, but then I literally just had this picture in my head of a cross. So you can go from the east to the west for your transgressions, and that's, he's taken us away from them.
Mm.
But then from the heavens to the earth, he loves us. And if
Mm.
you put that into a picture, you literally get the cross.
So
You
cool.
get a cross.
So cool. God is so kind and
Mm.
so good. And I am so amazed by the way he threads our stories together
Yeah.
and he has a plan and he pulls us into church families and different situations and all of these different moments where God had perfectly orchestrated our stories and your story. And I think for you, like, if you could encourage anyone, let's say someone's listening for the first time, they've never listened to an episode before, they actually are kind of going, who even is this Jesus guy? Is there something you would encourage people to do if they're curious? You kind of had those questions in your
Yeah.
mind in those times. And I think for a lot of people, they have those questions and then they also kind of go, well, I'll wait for a sign, God.
If you're dwelling on those questions that we all have, if we don't know God, because then we don't know purpose, yes, do the prayer, like, show yourself to me. I want to experience you. I want to encounter you. But take the step yourself to make that happen. Like, if you know that you are waiting on God to show himself to you, put yourself in situations where God has to come through. Go step into the church, reach out to a church, even on Instagram, like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit lost. Can you help me? Take a step for yourself, because then he will reveal himself to you. He has to reveal himself to you.
I wrote down a quote. We had an awesome preacher over the weekend.
Amazing preacher.
And he said this thing that I wrote down. Sometimes we seek God for a word, a miracle, or a move, but we actually just need to seek God to find God.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes even as Christians, right?
Mhm.
Like whether this is your first time ever hearing about Jesus or whether you've been a Christian for a long time, sometimes we go, God, I need you to do this. I
Yeah.
need you to move. I need you to X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
And then we go, well, why can't I hear God's voice? I can't do this. When actually God's saying, I just want you to seek me,
Yeah.
cry out to me, pray to me, worship me. And in the seeking God, he speaks.
Yeah.
He reveals his heart to us. I think in this lead up to Easter, seeking God is so important,
Mhm.
you know. And I love that your part of your story is that you just had this knowing, this
Yeah.
deep knowing. You didn't know how it was going to work out, but you had this sense. And I love that, you know, there's the scriptures that say when you seek him, you'll find him.
Yeah.
And so seek him. Whether you are a long-time Christian or this is the first time you're ever hearing this concept, pray, cry out to him, ask him, read your Bible and see what God does, because we can almost guarantee something will change.
Absolutely. You're never too broken as a person, even as a Christian, even as a non-believer. Like, you're never too broken for God to love you.
No,
Ever.
not
And
at
that is
all.
something that even this year, I had a lot happen at the beginning of the year that I really, really had to just dwell in. Like, I'm not worthy of this love, even if I feel like I am. And I tried to run away from the love. I really did try. I was like, you do not deserve somebody like me. Like, you should go find somebody good. But you just need to understand that, like, the love has no bounds. Like, it will just engulf you, and when you allow that to happen, everything else in your life will follow through.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the pod, India. I love your story. I love you. And I think that what you kind of said at the end there, like, we're never too far. We're never too broken, because that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about the cross, and it's about Jesus and what he's done. So I'm so proud of you. And yeah, I cannot wait to hear what God does in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the podcast. I hope that it encouraged you, that it's helped you through, and that it helps to challenge you through the season of life that you're facing, uplift you if you're feeling down. And most of all, I pray that you're able to draw closer and closer to God. I'm so excited to keep diving into the Word of God with you. I pray you're able to find moments of joy.